Have you ever felt that someone ended your day? Perhaps a cross criticism, an unfair comment, or that typical pinprick that seems to have been tailored to take you seriously. The truth is more uncomfortable, but also liberating. No one has this power over you. His anger is not the other's fault. It is a choice, even if unconscious. And that changes everything. The secret to emotional mastery is not to control the world, but to govern its own reactions. In this guide, you will find out how to develop self-control, wisdom, clarity, and especially emotional freedom. You will understand how to protect your peace, even in the midst of chaos. Prepare. This reading can become a key that you didn't even know you needed to spin. Over the next few minutes, you will learn how to deal with difficult people without losing their essence, how to practice emotional detachment, how to develop emotional intelligence, and especially how to deliver your power into the hands of others' emotions. If you have already wondered how to stop getting annoyed easy, this content was made for you. And more than answers, it will offer you practical, applicable, and transformative tools, all with a clear, engaging, and affordable language. Here, you will change frustration for serenity, anger at reflection, and impulsive reactions for conscious choices. It is as if, with each topic, you remove an invisible weight that has been following you in relationships, at work, and even in internal dialogues. This is not just content about emotional control, it's about emotional healing. It is about you to learn to put limits, stop affecting negative comments, and finally rediscover your authenticity, even when everything around it seems noisy and unfair. It doesn't matter if you have already felt lost, explosive, or misunderstood at the end of this reading. You will have more tools, more awareness, and more power over yourself. Take responsibility for your reactions. It is easy to point the finger and blame others for what we feel. That reckless driver, the passive antique colleague, or even a relative who always knows where to poke. But the truth is, no one puts emotions within you. They are born of your interpretation of the facts. This is the first step towards self-control. When you recognize that your reactions are your responsibility, it begins to build a firm bridge between what happens and how you choose to answer. Imagine that your emotions are like waves. You can't stop them from emerging, but you can learn to surf. This requires reflection and break. Instead of exploding in the heat of the moment, try taking a deep breath and observing what you are feeling. Name this as frustration, this is anger. The simple appointment already calms. It sounds silly, but it's powerful. It's like activating an internal button of clarity in the midst of chaos. The practice of Stoicism teaches just that we cannot control others, but we can control as we react. It's like using noise cancellation headphones in the noisiest city. The sound is still there, but you choose what you will hear. If someone screams, you can listen to serenity or answer in the same tone. The choice is yours, and the more you choose calm, the stronger you become. Want a practical example? Create an emotional emergency routine. When you feel the blood boil, go to the bathroom, take water, or just be silent for 2 minutes. This interrupts the automatic reactivity cycle. Small actions like this cultivate a sense of control that transforms their way of existing in the world more lightly, more lucidly. Understanding that your reaction is a choice, not an inevitable reflection, puts you in the driver's seat. And this is emotional freedom. It means that you can cross discussions, criticism, and even offenses without carrying everything on your back. You listen, filter, and choose. It may even feel the anger come, but you don't have to give it a microphone. This is not repressing, it is wisdom. This key turn also changes your conflicts. When you respond calmly, instead of attacking, it surprises the other and changes the course of the conversation. Many times, the person just wanted to see you lose control. But when you keep peace, she loses the game and you get respect. It is not about being passive, it is about being intentional. And that starts with a simple recognition: what I'm feeling is mine. Of course, taking this responsibility is not a magical process. It will be relapse. It will have a difficult day. But the more you practice, the more it becomes your second nature. And in the end, this is more than an emotional trick, it's a lifestyle. A path that gives you power without having to scream. And when you realize this, the question comes, was the problem really the other? Stop expecting others to be like you. Few things generate as much frustration as waiting for others to act the way we would act. It's like delivering an invisible script to someone and getting annoyed when the person improvises. But each human being carries a unique story with different experiences, pains, and limits from his own. Expecting the other to react with the same calm, empathy, or attention you would have to ask to live disappointed. This expectation is a prison, and the detachment is the key. Accepting people as they are does not mean agreeing with everything or allowing disrespect. It only means recognizing that the other has the right to be different. When you let out this need to control, something beautiful happens. You feel lighter, more at peace. Instead of charging an ideal reaction, you start to observe clearly. And in this space between disappointment and acceptance, emotional freedom is born. Have you ever found yourself thinking, if it were me, it would have done it different? So it is. This silent comparison creates hurt. A practical suggestion: when something bothered you, ask yourself, does this person really knew what I expected from her? Sometimes the other did not even realize what they did or did not. This exercise avoids automatic judgments and favors communication, which is much more efficient than accumulating resentments. Stoicism teaches us to separate what depends on us from what does not depend. And guess what? The reaction of the other does not depend. You may even inspire, influence, but not control. It is like wanting everyone to speak their language in a foreign country. The discomfort comes from expectation, not reality. And when you leave this weight, you get more energy to take care of yourself and keep your self-control up to date. Another important point: do not romanticize relationships based on your idealized version of the person. This only delays your acceptance. Relate to the realto, the flaws, the silences, the different choices. Liberating. You can love someone and yet see their limitations without trying to fix. This is not coldness, it is emotional wisdom, and saves a lot of headaches. There is a detail that almost no one speaks: when you stop demanding that the other is like you, you get to know each other better. Why? Because it begins to notice where you are trying to control too much. And in this process, you also break free from the traps of judgment and external validation. After all, being understood is great, but being authentic is much more powerful. In the end, expecting less from others is not about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about shielding unnecessary disappointments and redirecting your strengths where you have a real impact yourself. And from this, a provocative question arises: is the other frustrated you, or is it your expectation that has not been communicated? Abandon the need to be always right. The need to overcome discussions may seem strength, but it is often disguised insecurity. The truth is that insisting on being right all the time consumes energy, contaminates relationships, and steals your peace. The cost of injured pride can be high hurts, distances, unnecessary conflicts. Instead, how about experiencing the path of wisdom? Sometimes giving in is not losing, is choosing your calm above vanity. Do you know that moment when you already realize that the other will not change your mind, but keep arguing just to win? So it is. Is it really worth it? The search for self-control is to know when it is worth silence. It is not about silence for fear, but by strategy. Silence in this context is a form of self-respect. After all, not every comment needs response, and not every provocation deserves stage. You can apply this today. Next time you get in a heated conversation, try to listen more and argue less. Say something like, "I understand your point, even if I see differently." This simple phrase disarms the environment and preserves its emotional freedom. And here among us, life is too short to taste points in battles that won't take you anywhere beyond frustration. There is a difference between defending what you believe and fighting to be right. The first requires clarity, the second, control. And where there is excessive control, there is little space for growth. Accepting that the other thinks different can even open doors for a deeper reflection, both yours and his. Wisdom is to choose which battles really deserve your energy. Not everything is personal. Not everything is war. In the field of Stoicism, the idea is clear: the ego is the enemy. Often what is at stake in a discussion is not the truth, but the vanity. And when you learn to recognize it, something changes inside you. A kind of serenity arises. A peace that does not depend on winning, but coming out. It is a kind of silent victory and much longer lasting. Want a practical exercise? Choose a debate that you live recurring with someone close. It can be with a partner, a friend, even at work. The next time he arises, instead of getting into the clash, listen, breathe, and say, "I'll think about it." Just that. Note how emotion changes. You stop feeding the flame. This is self-control, and it is also freedom. And when you set aside the need to always be right, you discover something surprising: you connect more. People feel they can talk to you without being judged, and this creates real bridges. In the end, what is it worth more, winning a discussion or maintaining a healthy relationship? This question is worth gold and leads us to the next point. Discuss your personal value from the opinions of others. You are not what others think of you. It seems obvious, but in practice, many live hostages from external validation. A crooked look, a crossed comment, or even a simple visa unanswered already shakes self-confidence. But here is a liberating truth: its value is not in anyone's hands. He is intrinsic, is born with you, and nothing they say can decrease it. Every time you measure yourself by the opinion of others, you deliver your emotional power. It is like walking with a remote control glued to the forehead, where anyone can push the button of their anger, frustration, or insecurity. But when you start to see yourself clearly, you realize that you can change this game. And the first step is to filter. Constructive criticism enters, free attack comes out. Want a practical example? When you receive a criticism, breathe and ask yourself, does this person know me enough to make sense? If the answer is no, discard. If so, reflect. Do not take it to the personal side, take it to the evolutionary side. After all, what others say talks much more about them than about you. And cultivating this internal filter is essential to your emotional freedom. It is not about ignoring everything they say, but knowing where it comes from and why it has affected you. Sometimes the emotion that comes up has more to do with an old wound than with the current comment. Realizing this is a huge step in your self-knowledge process. And when you know yourself, it validates inside. What comes from outside may even echo, but don't knock you down anymore. Stoicism has a powerful mantra: if something does not depend on me, it should not disturb me. The opinion of the other is his territory. You just need to enter if you want. This conscious choice preserves your peace and strengthens your self-control. What's more, it prevents you from shaping to please, making room for living more authenticity, even if it costs some approvals. Practice to compliment. It sounds simple, but it is revolutionary. Have a notebook of yours, where you write your victories of the day. No wonder. This strengthens its internal validation and diminishes the need for applause. Gradually, you stop seeing yourself through the eyes of others and look at yourself with more love, more acceptance, more true. And when you detach yourself from the opinions of others, something beautiful happens. Your energy comes back to you. Those emotions spent trying to please or avoid criticism give way to something more productive: focus, presence, true communication. And the question that arises is, who would you be if you weren't so worried about what you think? Establish and communicate limits. Putting limits is not selfishness, it is a form of self-respect. When you learn to say no firmly and tranquility, you are saying yes to your peace, your time, and your emotional freedom. It is common to feel guilt at first, especially if you were taught to please to be accepted. But over time, you will understand that protecting yourself is essential to staying whole. And who really respects you understands your limits. One common mistake is to believe that others should know when they are going from the point. But the truth is that no one reads minds. Therefore, communicating clearly is as important as setting the limit. Instead of waiting for the other to realize, say with kindness, "I prefer not to talk about it now," or "This subject wears me. Can we change?" This shows self-control and avoids unnecessary conflicts. Limits are like fences; they do not prevent the approach, but make it clear how healthy it is to go. And that goes for everything: family, friends, work. When you do not define where the other ends and where you start, it becomes territory invaded by expectations, charges, and even manipulations. Protecting yourself is an act of wisdom. Those who do not respect their limits will hardly respect their authenticity. A useful practice is to observe the moments when you feel drained after interactions. These are signs that a limit has been exceeded. Write down, reflect, and think about how to communicate this next time. This is active reflection and prevents anger or resentment from accumulating. The absence of boundaries is not synonymous with kindness; it is an invitation to emotional wear. In Stoicism, there is a lot of talk about what is in your control. Its limits are: you may not control the behavior of others, but you can control your reaction to them. This includes moving away when necessary. Saying "I'm not available today" doesn't make you a bad person, makes you a lucid person. It is a kind of self-love that expresses itself without firm, but firmly. And do you know what is most beautiful? When you start to respect your own limits, others follow this example. You teach by the way it is. This creates healthier relationships, where there is true communication and not guessing play. And if someone gets annoyed because you said no, remember, someone else's frustration is not your responsibility. In the end, putting limits is like adjusting the volume of your life. Not everything needs to be noisy. Not everyone deserves unrestricted access to their energy. And when you understand that, you start to ask yourself, how many times did I say yes just so as not to displease, and I abandoned myself in the process? Detach from external validation. Seeking the approval of others is like trying to fill a bullshit. The more you put it, the more leaks. To live to be accepted is to give up your authenticity. Basically, we all want to be seen, but when this need turns into dependence, we lose the connection with who we really are. The secret is to rediscover its internal validation, not to put its value in the hands of passenger applause. Emotional freedom starts when you understand that not everyone will like you, and that's fine. People who shine, too, always bother those who have not yet discovered their own light. When someone criticizes your choices, the problem may be more in the insecurity of others than in you. And maintaining this consciousness active is what allows you to follow your path clearly and self-control. Want an effective practice? Every time you post something, make a decision, or express yourself, ask yourself, am I doing this to please me or to be accepted? If it is the second case, stop and reflect. No problem wanting recognition, the problem is depending on it. Wisdom is in using compliment as a bonus, not as fuel. Your engine has to be you. This does not mean becoming insensitive or indifferent. It only means that you will no longer mold yourself to fit in molds that have not been made for you. Stoicism reinforces this to live according to its internal principles, not the applause of the audience. Because the audience changes, but your conscience accompanies you forever. And living with coherence brings a kind of peace that no one takes away. Have you noticed how some people change their minds on you based on what you should do? So it is. And if your self-esteem oscillates according to these tides, you become a passenger of your own life. Antidote is self-knowledge. The more you know yourself, the more you understand what moves you, what makes you good, and what is just external noise trying to enter. Constructive criticism must be welcome, but the fear of judgment cannot be your guide. When you decide to live based on your truth, it begins to attract people who respect this even if they disagree. And this kind of connection is much richer than surfaces that are based on appearances or masks. Authenticity may push some away, but it brings the right closer. And in the end, the question that transforms is how many times are you no longer who is just to fit someone's ideal? To detach from external validation is to regain the right to be whole. What's more, it is realizing that what most enchants in people is precisely what they have unique, not molded. Answer with silence, not with anger. Silence is underestimated. A lot of people confuse silent with weakness, but in fact, being quiet at the right time is a superpower. In heated discussions, when anger hits hard and the desire to rebate comes as an impulse, silence can be the shield that protects his peace. He is not omission, it is strategy. It's the interval you give yourself not to react, so that you will regret it later. Responding calmly requires more strength than screaming. It is an exercise in self-control that requires training and consciousness. A practical tip: when you feel the blood boil, take a deep breath 3 times before opening your mouth. Ask yourself, what I will say will improve the situation or will only feed the conflict? If it is the second option, silence. Not always what is true must be said at that moment. Sometimes wisdom is waiting. In Stoicism, it is said that not reacting is a form of self-control. You don't have to get in all the fights that invite you. It's like that old metaphor: if someone offers you a gift, in that case, an insult, and you don't accept it, they remain from those who have offered. By not reacting with fury, you keep your emotional freedom intact and frustrates the expectation of those who wanted to see you decominate. There is also a beauty in the silence that communicates. It shows that you are in control, that you chose not to go down the level, that their serenity is not fragile as they thought. This by itself is already a powerful answer, and often more eloquent than any rehearsed sentence. Silence, in this sense, validates who you are, not who the other tries to provoke. Want to practice? Next time someone tries to poke you with a sarcastic comment, smile lightly and remain silent. Then follow your life. It's like turning off the other's microphone without warning. This disconcerts, disarms, and preserves its energy. It is proof that you are not at the mercy of impulsive reactions, but in charge of your emotions. Silence is also an invitation to reflection. He gives you time to understand why it has hit you, which is behind your reaction. And in this pause space, clarity is born. You start to see what is worthwhile and what is just noise trying to sabotage your authenticity. Choosing silence, then, is like pushing the plane mode button in the middle of an emotional turbulence. And in the end, the big question is, how many confusion would you have avoided if you had answered with silence? It's not about never talking, it's about talking with purpose. And when her voice comes back, she comes clean, lucid, and much more powerful than the explosion of anger would never be. Dissolve anger with gratitude. It may seem strange, but anger and gratitude cannot occupy the same space at the same time. Try remembering something you are sincerely grateful while you are angry. It's like flame it erased. Emotion changes. The focus comes out of what is missing or annoying and goes good even on difficult days. The practice of gratitude is one of the most effective ways to recover control over their internal states. You don't need great events to be grateful. Sometimes it's a hot coffee, an unexpected message, or simply the fact that you are breathing now. The secret is to change the lens. Instead of fixing what you took from the axis, look around with other eyes. This does not deny reality, it only expands the perspective. And where there is clarity, there is less space for destructive impulses. Creating a gratitude diary is a powerful tool. Take a notebook and, every day, write 3 things you are grateful. Make this a habit. Over time, your mind gets used to looking for what works, not just what fails. It is a daily, silent, but deep self-control workout. And he acts as an antidote against the emotional poisons the world tries to offer you. In Stoic practice, the focus is on cultivating a balanced look, and gratitude is key to it. Even in the midst of conflicts, and a Stoic wonder, what is this teaching me? This is not toxic positivity. It is emotional wisdom, because seeing the lesson behind the discomfort turns pain into growth. And this is a way of dissolving anger without repressing it. Want a real example? Imagine that someone in traffic closes you abruptly. The impulse would be honking, screaming, getting annoyed. But you can choose to thank you for braking in time, for being safe, for not being injured. This internal change, even if subtle, prevents the episode from spoiling your day. You have chosen serenity instead of combustion. And this choice is freedom. It is also worth practicing the silent gratitude. When you feel frustration up, stop for a few seconds and think, what right now is working in my life? This pause rescues your consciousness and moves focus. It works like a bucket of cold water and anger, not to erase it, but to understand that she doesn't have to guide her actions. In the end, gratitude does not eliminate what irritates you, but changes your position on that. It's like moving your chair a little to the side and realizing that the light comes in better by another window. And that brings in thought-provoking question: how many moments of anger could have been transformed? If you had stopped to think, use criticism as a growth tool. Receiving criticism is never comfortable. The first reaction is usually anger, defense, or even denial. But what if you started seeing criticism as mirrors that reveal blind spots? Not every criticism comes to destroy you, some come to expand you. The secret is in filtering wisely to welcome what makes sense, discard what it does not add. And more than anything, use this content as an evolution lever. Not every criticism is fair, but every critic is an invitation to reflection. When someone points something to you, ask yourself, is there any truth in that? It may hurt in the ego, but can cure the behavior. Instead of reacting with emotion, answer with curiosity. This does not mean accepting everything silent, but choosing what will make you grow. It is the beginning of true self-control. A good exercise is to create a mental screen between you and the critics. Imagine that she goes through a filter before entering. What is constructive criticism? You keep. What is free attack? You discard. And remember, the tone of the other does not invalidate the content. Sometimes a useful message comes wrapped in a rough package. Separating the form from essence is a sign of emotional maturity. In Stoicism, there is a practice called premeditatio malorum, thinking in advance in difficulties. By applying this to the opinions of others, you prepare emotionally to deal with them. Instead of being surprised by a negative comment, you receive calmly, analyze, and respond with logic. This strengthens your self-control and decreases the impact of external validation. Use criticism as compasses, not as handcuffs. They can point out directions you have not seen, either in the way you speak, act, or relate. This does not mean shaping everyone's taste, but improving what is inconsistent with their essence. It's like polishing a diamond. It hurts at friction, but the brightness pays off. And that's where the true emotional growth lives. Want to apply this today? Choose a criticism that has bothered you in recent times. Instead of ignoring or brooding, write what you have learned from her. What did it hurt? What made sense? What can you change? This exercise transforms pain into clarity, the criticism into a tool, and it transforms you into a more conscious person and much stronger. In the end, it is not the negative comments that define us, but what we do with them. You can be crushed or cut by a criticism. The difference is how you choose to react. And the question is, have you used criticism as steps or as chains? Master the art of letting go. Holding the anger is like keeping a coal on your hand, waiting to burn the other. In the end, who gets hurt is you. Learning to let go is not weakness. It is a gesture of freedom. Free what hurts you. What has already been said, which cannot be changed, is a gift you give yourself. It does not mean forgetting or agreeing, but simply deciding that it will no longer command your emotions. Practicing the detachment begins by recognizing what is outside your control. You cannot change the past or control the actions of others, but you can choose what you carry with you. And, let's face it, there is something that only takes up space. Storing sorrows, resentments, and old discussions is like walking with heavy bags on a lightness that requires lightness. Release is often the greatest act of self-control. A useful exercise? Write on a paper everything you would like to leave behind: names, phrases, moments. Read aloud, then tear, burn, or throw it away. It is symbolic but powerful. You transform something internal into something visible, and by destroying it physically, your brain understands it is time to follow. This simple practice has already brought serenity to many people who lived in the looping of frustration. Stoicism teaches that everything in life is temporary, including feelings. When you accept this transience, you begin to see your pains as clouds. They come, they darken the sky, but pass. The key is not to cling to the storm. The inner silence that is born of letting go is more valuable than 1,000 justifications. Sometimes healing happens when you decide to stop seeking explanations. Of course, releasing does not happen overnight today. It involves reflection, courage, and repetition. But each time you choose not to respond, not break, not revenge, something in you strengthens. It is as if your energy returned to the center. You stop turning around what hurts you and start walking toward what heals you. This is emotional freedom in action. What's more, when you break free from old stories, you make room for the new. For healthier relationships, for clearer thoughts, for more conscious decisions. The light heart makes better decisions. And the weight you lose does not disappear, it just ceases to be yours. This is emotional wisdom, understanding that releasing is not losing, it is gaining room to grow. And now it is a sincere provocation: what or who are you still carrying for fear of releasing? Mastering the art of letting go can be the bridge between the life you live and the life you deserve. Now that you know the ways to achieve your emotional freedom, the question is, what will you do with this power? Will you keep reacting on the impulse, or will you take a deep breath, pause, and choose clearly? The tools are in your hands: the silence that preserves your peace, the limit that protects your energy, the detachment that makes room for the new, and the gratitude that dissolves to the most intense anger. None of this requires perfection, only presence. Start small. Choose a situation from your day where you usually lose control, and practice respond differently. Don't expect the world to change, make your gaze on it. How about keeping an emotional diary? Or apply this tip of emotional airplane mode today. Remember, you're not what you feel, it's what you do with what you feel. So which of these practices most moved with you? What will be your first concrete change? Write in the comments and share your experience. It can inspire others in this same transformation process. If this content has touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications. There's a lot of deep things coming around, and I want to walk with you on this journey of self-control, wisdom, and, above all, authenticity.